Welcome to the Aligned Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Pooja Venkatraman. I'm a double Harvard grad, former BCG consultant, and now an executive coach for high achievers. On this podcast, we are going to tackle the 4 key things that you need to figure out in order to live a life of aligned ambition. Those 4 things are stress, productivity, performance, and purpose. We are going to make sure that you're driving your car in the direction that you actually want to go. That is the purpose part. We're also going to make sure that your progress along the road is consistent and effective. That's the productivity and performance part. And we're going to make sure that the fuel you're pouring into your tank isn't so noxious that it's filling your car with fumes and making the whole ride miserable. That is the stress part. Because if you can tackle those 4 things, stress, productivity, performance, and purpose, you can build the life and the career that you actually want. Not the life you think you're supposed to have, not the life that burns you out or doesn't fit quite right, but the life you actually want. One that fulfills your biggest ambitions and unleashes your fullest potential without sacrificing your sanity, your relationships, your authenticity, or your paycheck. A life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. That's what aligned ambition is all about. Let's get started. Hey guys, I am so excited for today's podcast topic. Don't celebrate your success, analyze it. So every high achiever I know, every Ivy League grad I know, all of my friends are absolutely allergic to celebrating their successes. You know this feeling, right? If you go into a feedback session with your manager or your end of the year review, you could hear 99 positive things from your manager or on your review. And then you'll hear one negative thing and your brain will totally zoom in on it. Right? And you'll completely forget the 99 things and all you'll be thinking about is the one thing that they said that you need to get better at. And we learned this in Harvard Business School, but I'm sure you've heard this concept in many other places. We were taught when you're giving feedback, this concept of like the shit sandwich, where if you have something negative to say to someone or something constructive, something that they need to improve, you're taught, or there's this common philosophy of like, start with something positive, then give them the real feedback, the thing they actually need to improve, and then end with something positive, right? And because we all know of that format, we can treat the positive things that we hear in our reviews or the positive feedback, we can treat it like it's filler, like it's boilerplate, right? Your brain is like, no, I know you're doing the shit sandwich technique to me. So I know that the 99 positive things you said, they're not real. They don't really count. That's just like boilerplate. That's just stuff you have to say. And so let me zoom in on the one thing you said that was constructive or that was negative, because it's like, that's what really matters, right? That's the real stuff. I know that everything else was just filler. It was just crap that you had to say to me because you had to say it to me. But now that one negative thing, that was what you really had to say to me, right? That's how we can often think about positive feedback, is not only do we just ignore it and discount it and focus in on the one negative thing, but we even can have the philosophy of like, you're just saying it to say it. I don't want the shit sandwich technique. You don't mean any of that stuff. What you really were trying to say to me was the one constructive thing, right? So that's what I'm going to zoom in on. So that's how everyone I know thinks about positive feedback. That's how I think about positive feedback, or it's certainly the default way that my brain wants to think about my successes, the things that are going well, and positive feedback that I get from people. And now at the same time, right? You probably know in theory that celebrating your success is a good thing, right? People it can feel like gratitude in our culture, where we all know in theory, gratitude is good. Gratitude improves your health, your mental health. Gratitude makes you feel better. You can buy a gratitude journal, right? And you're like, I should be like making my list of like 20 things I'm like grateful for, right? I feel like celebrating our successes sort of has that same feeling like in our collective consciousness of like, it's kind of like gratitude, right? If you're like me, you've heard the gratitude message quite a bit, and you can kind of have this thing of like, yeah, gratitude. I know I'm supposed to be like really grateful. Right? You might feel the same way, like, yeah, celebration, celebrating myself. Yeah, I'm supposed to do that. And it can feel kind of cliche. You've heard it a lot and you feel like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to pay lip service to that idea. Sure. I'm supposed to jot down what are 3 things I did well today. But like, if you're like me, you're doing it kind of like you do your gratitude journal, where you're like, in theory, I should be doing that. And then you just write down and you're like, I'm grateful for my house, I guess. Right? But it's not landing. It's not emotionally resonating. You feel like you're just something you're supposed to be doing, right? It's this cliche advice. And you can even feel bad that you're not doing it. This also happens to me with gratitude, right? Where you can feel like, well, I'm supposed to be being grateful, but I'm not actually grateful, and that's bad, right? So you can feel like I'm supposed to be celebrating. I know the advice is focus on what's going well and focus on your wins, and I'm supposed to celebrate, but I'm not doing that, but I should be doing that. And I feel bad about it, right? So that can be another blocker to celebrating. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I've experienced this, right? Because if you get past your blockers, if you get past the like, oh, I just discounted and I didn't even think about the positive feedback, I just zoomed in on the negative, and you get past like, it's just boilerplate, you're just giving me the shit sandwich, and like none of that positive stuff is even real. And if you get past the like kind of cliche framing of like, oh, it's like gratitude, I'm supposed to celebrate, if you get past all those things and you actually sit your butt down and you truly try to celebrate something that went well, right? Or positive feedback. If you've ever tried to do this, you probably will resonate with what I'm saying because I've done this and I've experienced it. If you really sit yourself down and try to celebrate and feel into what's going really well and what you're doing, like what's going awesome, what can happen is it feels unsafe. It actually feels unstable. It doesn't feel celebratory. It doesn't feel positive. If you really try to sit down and reflect on, I did a great job on that meeting. I really knocked it out of the park with that project. We really crushed our deliverables. The team is really happy with me. Just trying to sit with that success, you can even try it right now, can actually counterintuitively feel quite uncomfortable. A lot of people, what they experience, and I experience this too, if I don't manage my brain around this, I experience this too, it feels unstable, right? The more that you try to celebrate and say, this is what went really well, your brain can start the narrative of like, uh-oh, other shoe's gonna drop. I don't know, like pride goeth before the fall. Like if I like get too comfortable and like rest on my laurels, I'm going to get complacent and I'm going to get lazy, right? The moment that I sit down and celebrate and tell myself what an awesome job I'm doing is the moment that I'm going to fall flat on my face, right? Like the more that it's almost that like evil eye concept, right? Of like the more that I focus on what's going well, the more I'm going to call into existence, right? Something negative, something that's going to knock me off my feet. Right. And so people can actually, if you really get through all the blockers to celebrating and you actually make yourself celebrate, that can actually end up being your experience is you feel unstable. You feel stressed. You don't feel celebratory and positive. You feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I feel like I'm being arrogant. This might make me complacent. The universe is going to course correct, right? As soon as I start saying what's going well, it's going to hit me with something that's not going to be going well, right? And so it can actually feel very, very uncomfortable. And the other thing I've heard from people, and that I've had happen to me too, especially when I get positive feedback from people, rather than feeling like I'm doing such a great job, I can feel like, oh crap, the bar has gone up. That's your expectation of me now. And so now I have to always be performing at that level, and I'm going to disappoint you if I'm ever anywhere below that. If I ever struggle, if I ever let something drop, now the bar has become permanently higher, right? So those are all the ways that celebrating can actually end up stressing you out or making you feel like more tense and more unstable. And so if you get past all of the blockers to celebrating, you can sit down and try to celebrate and then be like, what the heck? I'm more stressed than I was before. Because a lot of times it can feel more comfortable and more familiar for us to just keep working, right? Just keep saying, okay, this is what needs to be fixed. Onward we go. Here's how I'm going to do it. And kind of stay in that zone of just like working on stuff rather than staying in the zone of let me really sit back and celebrate and appreciate everything that's going well. Because then your brain will start to say, uh-oh, is the universe going to course correct? Like, am I going to get lazy and complacent? Am I going to get arrogant? Is the other shoe about to drop? How does this actually mean something bad, right? If I celebrate. So I just want to tell you, if that's your experience with trying to celebrate your success, everything I just described, really normal. Really, really normal. You might feel like you're the crazy one, right? And everyone else is able to celebrate and everyone else is able to be grateful, but you're the only one that struggles with this. This is really, really normal. If everything I just described, you're like, holy crap, how is puja inside my brain? The reason it feels like I'm inside your brain is because it's normal. And I experience it and I see my clients experiencing it all the time. I think this is very, very common for high achievers, right? And listen, if it was the case that like you could achieve all the things you wanted to achieve without ever celebrating, I would be more than happy to say, don't even bother. Don't worry about it, right? There's all these like blockers, like mental blockers that are going to stop you from doing it. There's all this stress that can sometimes come up when you do it. So like, screw it. Don't bother. Don't celebrate. Just keep focusing on what needs to be improved and keep moving forward. If that was the case, I would tell you to just avoid this whole thing. But the reality is there is real gold that is hidden inside your success, right? And I don't want you to miss that gold because often it can be the key to what you need to do to achieve the next set of goals that you have or to create success again in your new situation, right? So there's real gold hidden inside your wins, inside your successes. So today I want to give you a way of extracting the gold from your successes without feeling like it's BS, without feeling like it's just filler, right? Just something you're supposed to be doing. And also without it triggering that fear of like, uh-oh, can I keep this up? Like, what if the other shoe drops? What if this makes me arrogant? What if this makes me complacent, right? All those fears that can come up when we try to celebrate. So there's real gold in there. And today I want to give you a way to actually extract that gold without triggering your fears or making you feel like it's BS. And the way to do that is to not celebrate your success, but analyze your success. Take something where you did well, where you created good results and it felt good doing it. Take that scenario and then ask yourself, what did I do that created this? And I want you to extract your own success playbook from your past successes, right? So I want you to sit down and ask yourself first, what did I do? What did I do? What was within my control that created this awesome outcome, right? And your brain is going to want to go to, well, here's all the things that were outside my control, right? Somebody gave me this opportunity and this thing just worked out and this team was really helpful and the situation worked out in this like way that made it easier for me. And that's all great, right? There were things that were outside your control that helped make it successful. That's awesome. But at the same time, there were also a bunch of things that were 100% in your control. There were things that you did, decisions you made, choices you made, actions you took, analyses, conversations. There were things you personally did to create that success. So that's step one of creating your success playbook and analyzing your success is take a situation where you were successful and ask yourself, what did I do? How did I create this? Yeah, there's other stuff outside too. There's stuff outside my control. There's stuff other people did. That's all fine. There's also stuff that I did. So what did I do to create this success, right? And let me write down all the decisions, the choices, the actions, the conversations. What's everything I did to make this happen? That's the first thing I want you to do. And then the second thing I want you to do, right? If you ever interacted with me in any way, you've seen this framework that's floating next to me, my core coaching framework. It says circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result, right? And what we're doing is we're taking a good result that you had, we're backtracking and we're saying, well, what were all the actions that created that good result, right? That's one part of the success playbook. And then I want you to keep going up the ladder. And I want you to say, what was I feeling that let me take those actions? What were my emotions that made it so natural and intuitive to take all the actions that I took? Maybe you were feeling curious. Maybe you were feeling neutral. Maybe you were feeling capable. Maybe you were feeling like, I got this, right? And now we're getting into the territory of thoughts. So normally when people ask themselves, what was I feeling? The thoughts and the feelings all kind of come blended together. That's totally fine. That's not a problem. So you can ask yourself, what was I thinking and feeling that created all those actions? Or you can go one at a time and say, what was I feeling? And then back it up to what were you thinking? It doesn't really matter. You want to know what was the general headspace? What was the collection of thoughts and feelings that led to those actions that made it feel so natural and intuitive to take the actions you took that created the positive result? So step one was pulling all the actions out, asking yourself, what's everything I did to create this great result? And then step two is asking, what was I thinking and feeling? What headspace was I in? What were the emotions I was feeling? And then what was I thinking? Right? What were the thoughts that were going through my head? Maybe it was something like, I know exactly how to handle this. I wonder what the next step would be. I know exactly where to go to get more information. I know if I can just really understand all the like nitty gritty, then I'm going to be able to figure this out, right? Whatever the thoughts were, find the thoughts and feelings that generated those actions that then created those positive results. Let me give you an example of a time I did this with a client. And you can do this in big moments and small moments, right? You could do this in as small of a moment as like, I went to a like holiday party and I told myself I only wanted to have 2 drinks and I actually stuck to it and I only had 2 drinks and I didn't have more, right? Super small thing. And you're like, okay, how did I do that? Right? What would I tactically do to make that happen? And what was I thinking and feeling to make that happen? Right? Or it could be like, I went to a social event where I didn't know anyone and I thought it was going to be super awkward, but I actually like really gelled with people and I had a great time. Okay. What did I do? And what was I thinking and feeling? So it can be small or big. It can be work or personal. But you can also do it for big things. And so the example I'm going to give you is a bigger example. I worked through this in detail with a client. We spent a whole session on this. So this was someone where they were transitioning to a new role at a new company. And the reason that they were coming over was they had already built in their previous company, they had built like a certain function and like a certain internal capability in that company, right? They had done it from 0 to 1. They had conceptualized it and been like, we need this internal capability. And then they had figured out how to build it. They constructed the team. They'd grown that team. It had shown great results. And then they were moving over to a new company to do the exact same thing, to build that same internal capability. Right. And they came in kind of being like, how am I going to do this again? right? Like, did they make a mistake hiring me? Like, how am I going to do this again? And we took the whole hour to really extract their success playbook and be like, hey, you already did this. How? How did you do it? What were all the process steps that you took? What were all the actions you took? And for them, some of the key actions that they were able to extract, from their past success, one was as they were setting up this new kind of internal capability, they really tapped into, this was like internally facing. So the clients were all internal, it wasn't customer facing. So they really tapped into like, what do the internal clients need? Right? Like, what is the need, like the problem that we're solving for people inside this company? We need to get really, really clear on what that is. And they realize like, hey, our internal clients don't even really know what they could use us for. Right there, it's actually not, they're not spending a lot of time thinking about that. They're very focused on the problems they have to solve. And they're not like deeply aware of how they could use us or what problems we could solve. So we even recognized that. And we knew we would have to do the legwork to even help them realize how they could use us. And so we got really good at like asking lots of questions. Like people would come to us with proposals. And instead of just saying, okay, we'll do that, we'd be like, hang on. Let's dig in. Let's ask a bunch of questions and really try to understand what you're trying to accomplish here. And then we will like make a counter proposal. We'll say, what about if we do this? Because we recognize that our internal clients don't fully understand what they could be using us for, right? So that was one thing that they did. The second thing that they did was they did a lot of small experiments. They were like, we're not going to commit in like a really big way and say like, oh, here's a new 10-person team or a big sort of like technology tool that we're building, any of that stuff. We're like, we have to do a lot of small experiments and just kind of see what sticks, right? So we're kind of making these proposals of how we can help. And then let's just do them in quick, scrappy ways and see what actually sticks. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing was as they found the things that stuck and that were working, then they would start to standardize, right? And they'd say, okay, now we have a process for how we do this, or we have a certain structure, or we have a set of tools that we use, right? So as certain things stuck, then they would standardize them. They also did a really great job of telling the story of what they were doing. They didn't just kind of stay in their hole and like execute a bunch of great projects. They were very proactive about being like, well, we're building this function and this capability for the first time. People need to know about it, right? Not just the people we work with, but like more people, like my own leadership and the other kind of internal clients in the company. Everyone needs to know that this exists. So they were very proactive about telling the story of what they were doing, giving case studies, helping people understand that this internal capability existed. And the other thing they did was they did a great job of keeping their eye on the impact. Right? They were like, we're not going to just get distracted by like what's interesting or what's cool, even though that's really fun too. They were like, we have to keep our eye on like what was most impactful, right? And so what are the metrics that we would use to like measure that impact? And then let's keep ourselves trending towards what's most impactful, not just what's most like intellectually interesting or like novel or cool or anything like that. Right. So those are the collection of actions that they extracted for themselves. Right. It's like, oh, that's what created success in this old role. That's what let me build this internal capability so successfully is I like really tapped into the customer need, right? Like the internal client need, recognizing that like they don't even know what they need. Right. So I have to extract it out of them. I have to help them figure out what they need. I did small experiments. I standardized things and made and scaled things as they got working. I told the story of what we were doing and I kept an eye on the impact. Right. None of which sounds like rocket science, but I just want to take you into like the psychology of that person as they were going into like their new role. They had done all of this so well and so unconsciously that they didn't fully realize that they had done this, right? Because when you're in your day-to-day, you're just operating on instinct, you're busy, you're just focused on trying to get stuff done every single day. You're not necessarily stepping back and extracting this whole success playbook. You're not looking back over the last quarter or the last 6 months or the last year and being like, pause. How the heck did we do all this? What were all the steps? What were all the actions? What were all the things that we were thinking and feeling? We so rarely actually do this, right? We're just in the blur of the day-to-day, making a bunch of unconscious decisions. A lot of them are working really well, right? We're just not super aware of them, which means when it comes time to replicate that success, because we haven't extracted that success playbook so explicitly, we can feel like, how did I do that? And like, how am I going to do it again? Right? Because if you don't extract your success playbook in this explicit way, the story that your brain is going to construct is, I got lucky. It just happened. People were nice to me. The stars aligned. My mentors were so generous. My other teams that I worked with were so generous. The team was so amazing. All of those things are true, right? I don't want to discount like all the things that were outside of your control that did help you create the success. That's important to recognize too. But if you don't explicitly extract all the stuff you actually did do, right? All the stuff that was in your control, your brain doesn't log it anywhere. Unless you sit down and extract it, it's not getting logged. And so then your brain has this feeling of like, I don't know, it just happened. Like stuff just worked out. That's how I created my past success. And then that creates a lot of nervousness going into round two, right? Going into like creating the success again, because you're like, last time it just happened. And so I guess I just have to hope it just happens again. Whereas the reality is it did not just happen, right? It didn't just like lightning didn't just strike and make it so successful. There's a bunch of stuff that you absolutely did, just like this client example I gave you. There's a bunch of stuff that they very explicitly and deliberately did. They just weren't aware of it because they were in the blur of the day-to-day the whole time. And so I want you to take that step back and really extract what were the actions I took, what were the decisions I made, what were all the choices, and then what was I thinking and feeling that powered all of those actions that made them so effective, right? I need to extract both of those, the actions and the thoughts and feelings. Let me extract all of that, and that is the success playbook, right? You're like, fantastic. Now I know exactly what I did, and I can go forward and replicate it again, right? Because everyone says you learn a lot from your failures, right? That's such a common like phrase or sentiment of like, oh, you don't learn anything from success. Like failure is really where all the learning is, which is fair. You can learn a lot from your failures. But let me tell you, I have actually learned a ton from my successes. I don't know the exact breakdown. I've never actually sat down and done the analysis, but if I had to guess, I would say 80% of my success has come from past successes. It's come from understanding what created success in the past and then extending that, doing more of that, bringing that to new arenas and figuring out how to like do that even bigger. I would say 80% of my success has been looking at what's already working. Why is it working? What's the machinery and the mechanics of how it works? And then let's expand that. Let's do it even more. Let's do it bigger and let's do it in more areas. I would actually say 80% of my success has been that. Building on what's working and extending what's working. And I would say no more than 20% of my success has been working on what's not working and saying, oh, here's something that's broken or that's not giving me the right result. Let me make adjustments. Both of those are important, right? But like, I think we have this flipped idea in our head that like 80% of our success is going to come from fixing what's broken, right? And so we zoom into everything that's broken and we're like, okay, this is what we have to fix. And if I got 99 points of positive feedback, and one negative feedback, 1 point of like constructive criticism, if I just fix that one thing, that's what's going to unlock success for me, right? Whereas the reality is extending and building on and deepening and going even bigger with the 99 things that are working, that's going to unlock way more success for you than like really working on that one thing that isn't working. Both are important, right? But just from a ratios perspective, I've seen this for myself and I've seen this with others too, right? Doubling down and extending and deepening what's working is going to create so much for success for you. And we just don't do it because it's just it's not intuitive to do that, right? When something goes badly, your brain wants to draw all your attention to it and it really wants to focus on it and make it better. That's just how our brains work because of our kind of negativity bias and threat orientation that's in all our brains. And when something goes well, our brain tends to just like push it into the background and be like, whatever, that went well, so I don't have to pay any attention to it. Let me keep focusing on the next thing that didn't go well and put all my attention on that. So it's not natural or it's not intuitive. It doesn't feel intuitive to us to zoom in on our successes and really spend a lot of time analyzing them and saying, why did that work? What did I do? What was I thinking and feeling? And then how do I bring that into new arenas, right? Into my next job and my next role, my next project? How do I do even more than that? How do I set myself up to do more of that? We don't tend to do that because our brain wants to focus on threats and wants to focus on what's not going well. But the reality is, I think a lot of the unlock of getting to the next level, achieving your goals, living a life and career of aligned ambition, I think a lot of that unlock actually comes from looking at what's working and then extending that and doubling down on that. And by the way, I think this is a general theme for all of my clients and all high achievers who want to pivot from sort of like a hustling, scarcity-driven kind of ambition to an aligned, flow-driven ambition. A huge theme of doing that is building on your strengths, right? And I think this is a very natural pivot point that comes for folks when they're going from being early career to being more mid-career. When you're early career, you're building foundational skill sets, right? Whether you're in consulting or in banking or in tech or you're an operator of some kind. Early career is all about building foundational skill sets and just getting up to good enough at all the core at the tools, right? So it's like I have to get to good enough at financial modeling, good enough at building slides, good enough at like running a meeting, good enough at like running my teams, all of those things. You're just getting to good enough across a lot of different things. At the point you're at now in your career, you're at good enough at all the various skills and all the tools that you need. And now you actually have to pivot your mindset to say, what are my spikes? Right? Spikes is a McKinsey term or like a consulting term for like, what are the things you're unusually good at? What are your strengths? And now you need to pivot from, hey, what are all the things I'm not good at? Let me keep bringing them up to like good enough. And instead say, no, what are my spikes? What am I really, really good at? That's what I now need to double down on, because that's what's going to get me to the next level, is not this like well-rounded kind of approach where I'm trying to be good at everything and kind of keep everything up to a good level. Now the next level is about saying, here's the 2 or 3 things I'm really unusually good at. I'm going to double down on that. And that's what's going to take me to where I want to go. And so pulling out your success playbook is one way of doing that, to say, okay, I'm not only going to focus on the one negative thing out of all the feedback that I got. That's important too. I'm also going to focus on the 99 positive things. And I'm going to say, why are those working? What am I doing that's making that so successful? What am I thinking and feeling that's making that so successful? Let me explicitly, deliberately extract my own success playbook from what's working, and then let me extend it. Let me start applying it to even more places and go bigger and go deeper. And so much of your success is going to be unlocked from doing that. Right? So that's my case for not just celebrating your successes, but actually analyzing them and going into them, getting the gold out of them by deliberately extracting your success playbook. And that's going to help you get the gold from your success without feeling like it's BS, right? And it's just cliche and you're paying lip service to it. And also without triggering those fears of like, what if the other shoe is going to drop? Right? And what if like pride goeth before the fall, and now the universe is going to course correct and like smack me in the face because I'm appreciating what I'm doing well. We're not going to trigger any of that, because we're not just celebrating for the sake of it. We're analyzing and we're understanding, how did this machine work? This machine was successful. Let me understand the gears, the gears and the levers of this machine so I can bring it to more places. So that's my case for you, to not just celebrate your success, but actually analyze it and extract your success playbook from it and build on it going forward. So now there's a couple things I want you to do. So depending on who you are that's listening to this, if you are a female Harvard Business School alum, then I want you to register for my roundtable that I'm hosting for the HBS Women's Association this Thursday. So if you're a female HBS alum who is listening before Thursday on the week of February 23rd, then I want you to register for my monthly roundtable. The roundtable is only open to female HBS alums, unfortunately, although it's a great group. It's super intimate and it's super safe. It's only us kind of in the room. No need to perform. No one else that you're, kind of talking to, like who's an outsider. It's all just us. And it's this lovely, cozy space. And so if you're a female HBS alum, I want you to register for my roundtable. We're going to spend the whole hour on Thursday talking about this. Not only talking about the concept, but we're going to go around and actually extract our own success playbooks for different things that are going well in our lives. So it's an opportunity for you to just do what I told you to do right there. You don't have to find extra time to do it. You can just come to our session. You can do it right there, and you can learn from everyone else's success playbooks. This is the other part I'm so excited about, is everyone's success playbook and everyone's way of operating is a little bit different. And so I think there's going to be amazing nuggets that come out of listening to everyone else's success playbooks and being like, oh, I might want to borrow from that too, right? Like that might be really fun. And so if you're a female HBS alum, that's what I want you to do, is register for that roundtable. The link is in the episode description. And if you're a female HBS alum or not, the other thing I want you to do is come book a coaching consult with me. Because like I talked about, extracting your success playbook is really just the tip of the iceberg. When it comes to living a life and career of aligned ambition, building on your strengths, and really finding that Venn diagram intersection between success and fulfillment, a life that looks good on the outside and feels good on the inside, one of the key tenets to doing that is building on your successes, building on your strengths, really keeping a pulse on what's working, why is it working, and how do I do even more of that, right? And that is not natural or intuitive for most folks to do, especially not natural and intuitive for high achievers to do, because we're so improvement oriented that we can kind of throw away whatever's working and only focus on what's not working. And so I want you to come book a coaching consult with me, and let's really kind of map out, how do we bring this philosophy into your career, right? Let's spend some time actually extracting those success playbooks and then making the plan for you to say, okay, therefore, this is how I'm going to be running the next week, the next month, the next quarter, this next phase of my career. I've literally been doing this like recently with clients, is just to pull out what's working, and then let's make the strategy and the tactical plan for how are we now going to apply this for this phase of your career very actively this week, this month, this quarter, so that you actually apply the success gold that you've pulled out of your past successes. And then I also think it's sort of a macro kind of strategic orientation to your whole career to say, okay, if these are my strengths, if this is what I bring to the table, if these are my spikes, what does that mean for my overall career strategy? What does that mean for what I want to do next and the overall direction I want to take my career? And so that's what a lot of what we do in coaching, right? Today is just tip of the iceberg. Take one success that you have, extract your success playbook, what you did and what you were thinking and feeling to create that good result, and then apply it going forward. That is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that we can do here. And that's the work I do with my clients, is pulling out more success playbooks in various areas of their life, helping them with sort of the micro implementation in this current role, this week, this month, this quarter, for this phase of my career. How do I actually apply this and bring this like strengths-based philosophy to my career where I am right now? And then we also do the macro strategy work of like, all right, now when I think about my next role in my career and overall direction I'm trying to go in my career, what does that strengths-based philosophy look like? So there's so much more that we can dig into and do here. Today is just the tip of the iceberg. And like I said, because it's not natural or intuitive to dig into your successes and really extract these playbooks, it's so helpful to have an objective third party help you do this. This is what I use my coaches for, right? Because it's very hard for me to like know what I'm good at or what my strengths are. I don't necessarily have a ton of awareness because it's so unintuitive, or because it's so unconscious and intuitive to me. I don't necessarily have a ton of awareness. And so this is what I have my coaches do for me, right? Is we will break down what's working and they'll be like, hey, these are the themes. This is what works for you. This is what you're good at. Therefore, this is how you should think about the next quarter or the next week or the next month. We should build on those strengths. I have people in my life that help me do that because it is so much faster and easier to have an objective third party looking at you from the outside, just telling you what they see and helping you build that strategy. And it's so much easier when you just have time set aside on your calendar to do this work. This is the kind of work that is like important but not urgent, right? Which just always falls through the cracks and never gets prioritized when it's just you with your own to-do list trying to get it done, which is why it's so powerful to bring in a coach and say, I'm setting aside time on the calendar, we're troubleshooting it, we're problem solving it, we're deciding what the solution is, we're deciding the implementation, and then it's done, right? That's why I have coaches as well, is because I know if it's just floating on my to-do list, it's never going to rise to the top. So I have meetings on my calendar and people that help me do this in a structured way, because otherwise I know it's just going to fall to the bottom. But it's important. It's never going to be urgent, but it's always going to be important. And so I create structure around it to make sure that it happens. So like I said, it's just today's little success playbook. One success, one playbook is just the tip of the iceberg. And if you want to, what I think you should, right, implement this into your day-to-day life, into the role that you're at in right now, and also implement this into your macro career strategy and where you're trying to go. Get an outside perspective to help you see yourself more clearly than you can see yourself. Get some structure and accountability on the calendar so that it's not that thing on your to-do list that's just moving every week for months and months and months, but it actually gets done. Come talk to me, book a free coaching consult, and let's talk about how we can extend your success playbook to all the parts of your career and your life and really implement this like strengths-based philosophy into everything you're doing. Because if you're here and you're listening to this, I know you have a ton of strengths. I know you have a ton of things that you're already doing that are working really, really well. And I think we should just build on those and grow based on those. Even if your brain wants to focus on what you're not doing well, you have such an incredible base of what's already working. And I want that to be the foundation of everything you do going forward. So come talk to me and let's make that happen. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Aligned Ambition podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and share this podcast with anyone you know that you think could use it. If you'd like to explore working together in a one-on-one coaching engagement with me, book a free consult call at poojavcoaching.com/contact. You can grab that link in the episode description. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or topics you want me to cover in this podcast, shoot me an email at pooja@poojavcoaching.com. You can grab that in the episode description too. Talk to you soon.